Shalom Aleichem, Rabbi Kovacs here, pre-recording Mishnah Yomi for the first day of Chag Sukkot, 5785. We're in chapter 6, Bava Metzia, Mishnah Het, Mavir Chavit, Mimakom Lemakom. Somebody was bringing a barrel for somebody else, Ushvara, and it broke on the way. Bein Shomer Chinam, whether he was an unpaid custodian, he was just asked to do it. Bein Shomer Sachar, he was hired to schlep the barrel. Yeshava, he should make an oath, a shavua, that he was not negligent, that it was not his fault, and he will not have to pay for the barrel. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Zeh v'zeh yeshava, he says, yes, in both cases, shomer chinam, shomer sachar, he can make the shavua. That's what I heard. V'tameya ani, but I am surprised, im yecholin zeh v'zeh lishava, if both of these shomrim can simply make a shavua that they weren't negligent and be exempt. What Rabbi Eliezer is getting at, the Gemara says, is a shomer sachar has to pay even if he's negligent. It's only a case of onus, of really unavoidable issues where the shomer sachar is pater. If he's just, negligent, makes a mistake, didn't see it, should have seen it coming, he should have to pay. Now, the machlokes the Gemara gets into is, does Rabbi Eliezer hold that tripping and falling, and dropping the barrel in this case, is posheya, is negligence, or could it even be onus? Could it be an unavoidable accident? So he seems to hold it's posheya, nitkal posheya, that's tripping and falling. You should have looked where you're going. You should have done better. It's your fault. Where the other sages might say it's onus, it's not your fault. Or it could be, the other sages say, even if really it was negligence, we want people who are moving things on behalf of other people to be able to make a shvua that they were not negligent. As long as they're not negligent, they shouldn't be held liable. Otherwise, you're not going to find anybody who's willing to schlep barrels on behalf of anybody else. They'll be too worried about the strict liability and the financial burden they will incur if something happens on the way. Mazal Tov, and on to chapter 7. Hasocher et apolim. Someone hires workers and didn't necessarily tell them when to show up for work. Amar lahem lahashkim, and then he tells them, listen, I want you to do hashkama, to come very early in the morning, crack of dawn. Ulhariv, and I want you to stay late at night. So do they have to do so? So the Mishnah says, makom shenahagu shalo lahashkim, if the custom in this place is workers don't come that early in the morning, v'shalo lahariv, and they don't stay late at night after sunset, eino rashai lechofan, the employer can't make them work the extended hours. Now, obviously, if that was written in the contract and he agreed to pay them more to work extra hours, pay them overtime, that's certainly allowed. But if he didn't specify, he can't make them work above and beyond the normal workday in that place. The Mishnah adds, Makam shenagu lazon, a place where the employer pays for lunch. Yazon, he has to pay for their lunch. L'sapik bimtika, and also give them, a dip, something a little sweet to dip in, like a relish, a sauce to dip their bread. Not just bread, but give them something to dip it in. So yasapik, so he has to supply the dip, also the sides, the hummus, of course. Hakol kaminag medina, according to the custom, what's normal in that place. Ma'asei Rabbi Yochanan ben Metzia, Shamar Livno, Rabbi Yochanan ben Metzia told his son, Tsei suchur lanu polim, go out and hire some workers for us today. Holach pasuk lehed mizon. He went and hired workers. He said, yes, we'll give you food. Kashaba etzel Aviv, when he came back to his father, he said, yeah, I hired 10 guys. Amar lo, he told him, he told his father, hey, I told him we'd give him lunch. He says, B'nei, my son, afilu ata'osei lehem kisudat Shlomo b'shaita, even if you give them a feast, like Shlomo haMelech used to give a feast. And in Tanakh, when they talk about Shlomo HaMelech's feast, we're talking about dozens of animals, hundreds of birds. We're talking about a humongous meal, fit for a king. Like literally, he was the king, but he was also feeding a lot of people. So even that large, lo yitzota yedei chavatan imahem, you will not have fulfilled your obligation. You got to give them more. Shehen b'nei Avraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, because every Jew is the children of Avraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. So they deserve something like Avraham had. Now, Avraham's feast was actually more per person than King Solomon, than Shlomo HaMelech. How do we know? Because Shlomo HaMelech, he had hundreds of animals served, but he was feeding thousands of people. Avraham Avinu in Vayera, 3 malachim show up, 3 guys show up, and our sages learn out, he slaughtered 3 different cows, 1 cow per person, and served them the tongue. They know how to cook tongue. It was really great what he did back then, but it was 1 cow per person, not 100 cows for 10,000 people. So his Suda of Avraham Avinu was even better. And it being the first day of Sukkot, on Sukkot, of course, the first day, we have the Ushpizin Kadishin, we have the guests who visit us in a spiritual sense, and Avraham Avinu is the main, they all come every night, but Avraham Avinu every day, Avraham Avinu is the main guest. The source of chesed, the first day of Sukkot, is connected to Avraham Avinu, who went out of his way to give his guests, a really above and beyond what even a king would give. So Baruch Hashem, that the Mishnah fell today, the first day of Sukkot, no coincidences in Shas. So Mishnah goes on, Ella od shelo yatchilu. So go to the workers, tell them before they start, b'malacha, the work, say, v'omer lahem, you gotta go tell them, he's telling his son, almanot she'ein lechem aloi, ela pat v'kidin pivad. Listen, I'm only going to serve you bread and some beans, some legumes, and of course the dip, that's a given. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, Rabban Shimon, he says, lo hayat tzarich l'bar. He says, really, he didn't have to send his son to tell the workers, it's not going to be a lavish, fit for a king lunch, it's just the basics, because hakol k'minhag medina, it all depends what's normally served to workers for lunch, that's what you have to serve, not more. I want to point out that the Gemara on this Mishnah, the Gemara for chapter 7, it starts in the Gemara about around Daf 83, Pei Gimel, has some really fantastic, amazing stories. Every daf in Shas is amazing. Every Mishnah is amazing. There's some really special stories, including when they hired the son of Bar Yochai. They hired Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, to be an investigator for the police. And he said, if you see someone sleeping in the day, maybe they were up at night stealing. But if they're a Talmid Chacham, it's because they were learning all night. So I say this all the time. If you see someone falling asleep in shul, in the Beis Midrash, he was probably learning late at night. So it's a very good thing to judge people favorably. Also in Daf 83b is perhaps the first recorded historical use of anesthesia and sterile operating field when there was a surgery done on Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon. The Gemara goes on to bring stories of Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish, very famous stories about that. So highly recommended for your perusal during Chag is not just the Mishnayot, but the Gemara at the beginning of chapter 7, Bava Metzia, Tizkuli Mitzvot, Chag Sameach.